If your doctor told you to rest your Achilles until it stops hurting, stop and then listen to this. Because the advice isn't wrong, the way that most bad advice is wrong in a specific structural way. And if you've been in the Achilles rest and flare-up cycle for months or years, this specific mistake is the reason why you're still here. I'm an athletic trainer. I've worked with runners over the last 13 years, including thousands in person and hundreds online. And the thing I hear most consistently from runners who've been through PT, through rest cycle, through injections from orthotics and stretching program is some version of this. I did everything right and it kept coming back. When I hear that, I don't think this runner's had a bad tendon. I think this runner was given the wrong advice. And don't get me wrong, I believe that most rehab providers have good intention and they're just trying to help you. But there's a knowledge gap in physical therapy, orthopedics, medicine, and the athletic training world. And no one has explained this. And I call this the biology gap. And once you understand it, every decision that you make about your Achilles changes. By the end of this video, you know exactly what the biology gap is, why it explains everything you've been through, and how to use it to make smarter decisions about your training today. I want to tell you about a runner named TJ. TJ had been dealing with Achilles pain for years before he found me. He wasn't passive about it by any means. He saw doctors, surgeons, and physical therapists, and they gave him the same advice every single time: rest. He told me that his doctor, his podiatrist, orthopedics, and even PTs just told him how to rest, but they never told him how long to rest. So he rested, and he ended up resting for about 6 months. And he said that the pain certainly went down, but then he didn't know how to get back into running after a long period of rest like that. 1 week, he decided to start running again, and within days, the pain just came right back. And here's what TJ said about this experience with rest. When you get that rest mentality, you start running again, you just don't feel right. You feel weaker, and the next thing you know, you feel pain when you get back to running. A week of rest can easily become 2 weeks, and it easily became a month, and it easily became 6 months. And then getting back to running is harder, you feel weaker, your cardiovascular fitness is definitely off, and you feel worse as a runner. TJ wasn't doing anything wrong, he was just taking advice that he had gotten. His tendon wasn't different or broken, he was operating with the advice that was meant for muscle, and no one explained to him why those two things are completely different. So what happened when we actually addressed the real issue, which is the capacity gap, which I'll talk about in a minute. But TJ went from 20 miles per week to 60 miles per week with a 97% workout adherence and 0 pain by 12 weeks. We didn't change anything about the structure. You had the same body and the same Achilles tendon. What was different was that TJ now understood exactly what the tendon needs. And I'll come back to TJ in a little bit. But first, let me show you the biology gap. This is the thing that no one sits down and explains to runners. You can see based on this graphic, the muscle heals well with rest. It has a rich blood supply, fast metabolism, and a protein turnover rate of roughly 7-10 days. When you strain the muscle, there's actual damage to the contractile tissue in the muscle. It needs reduced load so that it repairs safely and effectively. And over time, the pain will go away as the muscle rebuilds. And you can do a few weeks of rehab to restore that strength. That's why most people can respond to strains fairly well. On the other hand, tendon collagen is a completely different story. It has a half-life of 2 to 5 months, not days, months, and it doesn't have that rich blood supply that muscle does. So it doesn't turn over on a fast timeline. It's pretty slow. It's 20 times slower than muscle. So here's a critical part. Tendons do not respond to rest. It has to respond to strain. And we're talking about completely different biology between muscle and tendon, and respond to completely different inputs. The muscle says, rest me and I'll rebuild, and the tendon says, I need strain to regenerate or I'll degrade. And that gap of how muscle heals and tendon heal is the biology gap. This is why every recovery decision made with traditional advice like ice, rest, stretching, massage are typically for muscle, and it can make the Achilles problem worse. Yes, rest helps reduce pain. It only does that because it's no longer irritated by the strain that you put it on the tendon, and you're ultimately working with a capacity problem. Essentially, your tendon and calf muscles are strong enough to handle even a few miles of running. But when we apply the set principle of specific adaptation to the opposed demands, that means with rest, the tendons will weaken. The opposed demand is offload. So the tendon will respond by not regenerating tendon and collagen as often. And the opposite is true. When you run too much on a capacity problem, then the tendon will break down faster than it could be rebuilt. And that's how tendinopathy, the disorganized tendon protein inside the tendon, happens in the first place. In other words, the underlying weakness, the disorganized tendon, the ability to handle load is still there with rest. It just means that when you rest, the pain volume in your brain will turn down. And this is what leads me to the second piece of the biology gap, pain. With muscle soreness, pain is a reasonably reliable signal of tissue stress. You run hard, you lift it hard, and then your muscles are sore the next morning. That's your body telling you that you did a hard workout, and you have micro tears inside your muscle. But in that recovery period, allows you to help rebuild that muscle protein so they can help meet the demands of lifting and running in the future. Short tendons doesn't work the same way. If you look at a group of runners and put them through an MRI machine, you find something that doesn't make intuitive sense. Some of them with severe tendon degeneration or disorganization will report little to no pain, while others with fairly organized tendon structure will report significant pain. That means pain in the tendon is a nervous system signal. It can be influenced by fear, a history of flare-up, and how sensitized the nerves are around the tissue after months of reactivity and running on a capacity problem. So if a runner who's been in a rest flare-up cycle for 2 years has a nervous system that has learned to amplify and normalize that signal, and the runner who's been avoiding load now has a nervous system that interprets any loading as a threat because it has no reference for what safe running or loading or lifting feels like anymore. And that's not weakness, that's just how the biology, physiology of the nervous system works. And there's good news, actually. That means that we can treat pain as a tool, not as a verdict or life sentence. Movement is the intervention, specifically progressive mechanical load, like heavy, slow resistance training applied consistently over time is the key. That's what stimulates the tendon collagen remodeling, and that's what rebuilds tendon capacity, and that's how you close the biology gap. So how do you actually use this? I use a tool with everyone that I work with called the Runner's Green Light System. It's a simple framework for every training day, and I'm going to show you how you can implement this into your training right now. Alright, here's the Runner's Green Light Protocol. First, the most important thing I want you is to be curious about your pain. So take much time, pause the video if you have to, and be curious about your pain. If you can only handle a second or two, that's fine. If you can handle a minute or two, and just take note of where the pain is coming from, where you have pain the most. Is it in the morning, or is it after one, or during one? And just be curious with it and live with that lived experience, because what you want to do is you want to expose your brain and become more aware of what's happening, and that'll turn down the threat of pain. Like, pain isn't a life sentence. You can get rid of the pain, but because you've dealt with the chronic pain for so long, whether it's 3 months or 2 years or 4 years or 6 years, whatever it is, your brain has responded to pain as a threat. So it's time to move away from that. So that's the first thing I want you to do, is just be curious about the pain. And then I want you to compare the pain to something really painful, like a paper cut or a broken bone. That's your 10 out of 10 pain. So I want you to rate your pain based on that criteria from 0 to 10. Okay? You with me on this? And then we'll look at the Runner's Green Light Protocol here. I use a traffic light system, and this is clinically validated. It's not made up stuff. It's actually been shown in research to work. The goal is to keep you moving, to keep loading the tendon, to keep lifting, to keep doing the stuff that you need to do to remodel the tendon. So that's why I really like the traffic light system here. So if you have pain that's between 0 and 3, you're in the green light zone. This means you have full go. And you can run as long as the pain does not increase during, after, or the day after one, or the day after one, okay? If you're in your yellow zones of 4, 6 out of 10 pain, monitor the pain. You can still run through it, but consider backing up the intensity. Consider doing a one walk method, like the famous Jet Gallery method. It's totally fine. I do the one walk method myself because that's what works for me, right? And you can do that. You can also cross train. You can also take a day off if you have to. And we're not saying that rest is inherently bad. Rest for 1, 2, 3 days off, it's not bad. It's just rest for 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 6 months. That's bad. And then finally, you have the red light, where if the pain for some reason flares up so bad, it's 7, 8, 9, or 10 out of 10 pain, that's when I want you to rest. That's when you want to be curious about, okay, what happened? Am I experiencing a life stress that might contribute to the increased pain? Am I, doing something new and novel that's increasing the pain? Rest for 2 or 3 days, let it calm down. You can do cross training like a bike and an elliptical as long as it doesn't make the pain worse. And then you can progress gradually back into the activity that you're trying to do, whether it's a rehab or run. And this is where coaching is huge, and that's why I work with runners one-on-one to navigate situations like this, because inevitably during rehab it's going to come up, okay? So that is your runner's green light protocol. And the third and final piece of the biology gap is the one that can be hardest to hear because it sounds like good news when you're in it. It's this: when the pain goes away, the tendon isn't healed. When the muscle strain, the disappearance of pain is a reasonable signal that the tissue is recovered, and it's a good signal that you can start strengthening the muscle. Again, you can start going back into your normal activity. With the tendon, pain-free means that the nervous system is turned down the volume on the pain. But it's not signals that you're better. The underlying capacity problem is still there, and we've done nothing to reorganize and remodel the tendon collagen that you need for strong tendon. That's why so many runners have had the exact same experience that TJ's had. They take 6 weeks off only for the pain to come back when they start running. The finish line here isn't pain-free. The finish line is a tendon that can handle what you're asking it to do, because you built the capacity that makes the load manageable. Pain-free is the starting point. Capacity is the destination. So back to TJ. When we reframed the whole picture and he understood what the biology gap meant and what the tendon actually needed instead of the conventional rights that have been given him, the whole approach changed. He told me the thing that intrigued me to your program is no, you don't want to stop running, right? That's the first thing that laying it differently. You don't have to stop. You just have to learn it, right? And that's his exact words. He stopped waiting for permission to move, and he started running and strengthening his Achilles tendon. He built his load progressively week over week. And 12 weeks later, he was running 60 miles a week, 3 times when he started, with his Achilles holding at 0 to 1 pain. Not because the tendon magically healed, it's because he built the capacity that rest never did. That's what changes when you understand the biology instead of just following the advice. So if you want the full protocol for getting out of this cycle, this Achilles pain cycle, I put together an email course, sent you an email every single day that will show you exactly how to start loading the Achilles today. It's called the Runner's Tendon Blueprint, and you can find the link in the description. And lastly, I encourage you to check out this next video that will help start rehabbing the Achilles tendon the right way, right away. Check it out today, and we'll see you next time.